Imagine you are standing on a concrete balcony. It's maybe 3 or 4 stories up above this really noisy, congested city street.
Right, tons of traffic, sirens going on.
Exactly. Sirens wailing, cars honking everywhere. But your entire focus is just, it's locked onto this tiny artificial pool of water right there on your balcony.
Just completely zoned in on it.
Yeah. And you are trying to play matchmaker for 2 small golden fish. And the stakes are surprisingly high here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you get it right, you create this thriving, self-sustaining micro ecosystem right there on the concrete. But if you get it wrong, well, your entire biological project is essentially dead in the water.
Literally dead in the water.
Right. So today, we're looking at exactly what it takes to get that right. Welcome to today's custom deep dive. We are exploring the hidden mechanics of expert observation today.
That's a really great topic.
It is. And our source text for this is this hyper-specific, just beautifully obsessive blog post by an author named Ang. It's titled Notes on Fishkeeping Part 278, Identifying Female Golden Gourami.
I mean, just that number alone, right? Part 278. That immediately tells us we aren't dealing with just some casual weekend hobbyist.
Come here,
We are stepping into the mind of someone who has really committed to a deep, sustained study of their environment.
278 entries. I mean, just think about the psychological discipline that requires.
It's staggering.
It is. Most of us, we start a journal on January 1st and we completely abandon it by the second week.
Oh, guilty. Yeah, for sure.
Right. But to reach entry 278 means Ang has fundamentally rewired how they interact with this subject. They aren't just passively watching a fish tank.
No, they are meticulously documenting a highly dynamic biological system.
Which makes me wonder, what actually happens to human perception when you force yourself to document something with that level of rigor?
Well, it creates this major shift from passive absorption to active interrogation.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, when you know you have to actually write something down, your brain stops relying on the broad, lazy strokes it usually uses to paint reality.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you start actively looking for variables, patterns, anomalies. You basically build a mental database. So what we're looking at in this blog post isn't just a guide to a specific fish.
Right.
It's really a masterclass in how to process visual data when the stakes actually matter.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I don't think we can fully appreciate the physical traits Ang is looking for until we really understand the environment.
The context is everything here.
Right. So the source specifically mentions that Ang is setting up a new population for what they describe as backyard balcony outdoor ponds.
Ponds in quotation marks, yeah.
Exactly. And this specific golden gourami was purchased for one reason, which is to be paired with a male in this outdoor setup. Now, keeping an aquarium in your living room, where the temperature is perfectly controlled and the environment is totally static, that's one thing.
Very predictable.
Very predictable. But building an ecosystem on a balcony seems like an entirely different beast. How does this specific, highly constrained environment kind of influence what Ang is actually doing here?
What's fascinating here is that a balcony pond is a notoriously fragile, closed-loop system.
Fragile how?
Well, you are dealing with a really small volume of water that's suddenly exposed to temperature swings, wind, limited space.
Oh, right, the elements.
Exactly. In an environment like that, every single biological input has a massive ripple effect. Ang isn't just tossing a fish into a giant lake where it can swim away.
Right, there's no escape route.
Exactly. Yeah. Ang is acting as the architect of a miniature world. So if Ang misidentifies the sex of this fish and accidentally puts 2 males into that confined balcony space, it's not just a harmless mistake.
It's a complete disaster.
Exactly.
Because 2 males in a confined territory, especially with a species like Gourami, that often leads to intense territorial aggression, right?
Oh, vicious aggression.
They'll fight, they'll stress each other out, their immune systems drop, disease takes over, and suddenly the entire balcony ecosystem just collapses.
Precisely. The biological matchmaking has to be flawless because the structural constraints of the balcony demand it. Yeah, the survival of this new population hinges entirely on Ang's ability to read the biological barcode of this one specific fish.
Right.
And that leads us to the actual methodology. How do you bypass all the visual noise and know with absolute certainty what you are actually looking at?
Which brings us to the first definitive clue that Ang looks for, which is the dorsal fin.
Right, the dorsal fin.
For anyone trying to visualize this at home, the dorsal fin is that prominent fin that runs right along the top of the fish's back.
Like a shark fin, basically.
Yeah, exactly, like a shark fin. So the source notes that on this female gourami, the shape of that dorsal fin is rounded. And Ang contrasts this directly with the males of the species, noting that male Golden Gouramis typically feature pointed or elongated dorsal fins.
Very distinct difference.
Right. So picture this gentle, continuous sweeping curve on the female versus a structure that extends and sharpens into this distinct aerodynamic point on the male.
And that geometric difference is a classic example of sexual dimorphism. And there's this really fascinating evolutionary mechanism driving it.
Oh, really? Why do the males have the pointy fins?
Well, in many fish species, the males develop these elongated pointed fins for a couple of vital reasons. First, it's a display mechanism.
Like showing off.
Exactly. They flare those fins to appear larger and, more genetically fit to potential mates. But second, it serves a heavily territorial function.
Oh, to look scary.
Yeah, a larger, sharper fin profile just makes them look much more intimidating to rival males when they are defending their breeding grounds.
Okay, so the male is literally carrying around a billboard on his back that says, "I am big, I am healthy, and I own this space."
That's a perfect way to put it, yeah.
While the female, who doesn't really need to fight for territory in that same way, she retains a much more streamlined, rounded architecture.
Right, she doesn't need the billboard.
It's just incredible to me that a binary biological truth, the sex of the animal, is written so clearly in this minute architectural detail on the very top of its back.
It's all in the detail.
Yeah. But what I find even more interesting is how Ang processes this information. Because, when I look at a fish, I just see a golden blur darting around in the water.
Right, you just see a fish.
Yeah. I see the whole fish. But Ang doesn't seem to do that at all.
And that is the essence of heuristic processing. It's what cognitive scientists often call expert vision.
Expert vision.
Yeah, think of a grandmaster in chess, right?
Yeah.
When a novice looks at a chessboard, they see 32 individual pieces, and they try to calculate every single possible move.
Which is overwhelming.
Completely overwhelming.
Yeah.
But a grandmaster doesn't see individual pieces. They see negative space, geometric patterns, lines of tension.
Oh, wow.
They've developed a mental algorithm, a heuristic, that allows their brain to just instantly bypass all the irrelevant data.
So Ang isn't looking at the gills or the tail or the way the fish is swimming. Ang's brain immediately filters out 90% of the visual noise and just snaps focus directly onto the geometry of that top fin.
Exactly. Because the rounded fin is the highest value data point. It is the absolute most reliable, objective marker in that environment.
Yeah.
In any complex system, whether you are, debugging thousands of lines of code or analyzing a massive financial spreadsheet or examining a living organism, novices get lost in the volume of information.
They get distracted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But experts know how to identify the single variable that actually dictates the reality of the situation.
But wait, if that dorsal fin is the highest value data point, shouldn't that just be the end of the story?
You would think so.
Right. Ang sees the rounded fin, confirms it's a female, and puts her in the balcony pond. Done. But the journal doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't.
And I think this is where the text gets genuinely brilliant, because biology just loves to throw curveballs.
It really does.
Ang moves to a secondary trait, and suddenly the absolute certainty of that fin geometry runs headfirst into, scientific ambiguity.
Body shape.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. So the source text notes that this fish has a deeper, rounder body shape. Now, Ang's immediate hypothesis is that the female is carrying eggs.
Which makes total sense given the matchmaking mission.
Exactly. It's what they want to see. But in the exact same sentence, Ang writes, though perhaps she is just overfed. I actually laughed out loud when I read that.
It is a very, very human moment in the journal.
It's the classic dilemma. We've all been in a situation where we see someone with a round belly, and we desperately want to know if they're expecting a baby, but you absolutely cannot ask.
No, never ask.
Because what if they just had a massive lunch? You just never want to make that assumption.
That's a high-risk assumption, yeah.
Very high risk.
Yeah.
But joking aside, looking at this from a strictly scientific perspective, this raises an important question. I find it fascinating that even at part 278, an expert can still have this massive blind spot. Why can't Ang just tell the difference between eggs and too many fish flakes?
Well, because visual observation has inherent limits. You have to remember the physiological reality of the Golden Gourami.
Okay.
They don't carry young like mammals do. They don't have a distinct, visually unambiguous pregnancy.
Right. They lay eggs.
Yes. The females swell internally as they produce roe, which are essentially the unfertilized eggs. But at the exact same time, fish are highly opportunistic feeders in a captive environment.
They'll just keep eating.
Exactly. If there is excess food in the water, they will consume it until their bodies literally physically distend.
Wow. Okay.
So from the outside, when you're looking through the refractive distortion of water in an aquarium glass,
Oh, which warps everything anyway.
right, a stomach full of food and an abdominal cavity full of roe present the exact same visual data. It's just a distended, deep body shape.
So unless Aang has, like, a tiny little fish ultrasound machine or is willing to just wait and see if eggs actually appear in the pond, that specific data point is totally compromised.
Highly compromised, yes.
And I really respect how Aang handles that compromised data, because the confirmation bias here must be incredibly strong.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Aang bought this fish specifically to breed it. The entire goal of the balcony pond is to create this new population. When you want something that badly, and you see a piece of data that kind of supports it, like a round belly, your brain just screams at you to declare victory.
And that's why confirmation bias is one of the most dangerous traps in any analytical process.
Right.
It's that tendency to just search for, interpret, and favor information that confirms your pre-existing beliefs.
We all do it.
We do. And a less disciplined hobbyist would see that round body, immediately write, "She is carrying eggs," in their journal, and just move on.
Which could be catastrophic if they are wrong.
Precisely. But Aang demonstrates profound intellectual honesty here.
Yeah.
Aang documents the hypothesis, suspecting she is carrying eggs, but immediately introduces the alternative variable. Perhaps she's just overfed.
Right, holding those two thoughts at once.
Exactly. Aang acknowledges the ambiguity without forcing a premature conclusion. It is this beautiful microexample of the scientific method operating on a residential balcony.
I love that.
You observe a phenomenon, you form a hypothesis, but you ruthlessly maintain your skepticism until you have actually verified the data.
It really reminds me of how intelligence analysts have to operate. Like, you get a piece of satellite imagery that looks like a missile silo, but you have to force yourself to ask, could this just be a grain silo?
Right. What's the alternative explanation?
Exactly. You have to actively fight your own desire for a conclusive answer. So if the fin tells you one thing and the body shape gives you basically a 50-50 coin toss, how do you break the tie? Aang can't risk the entire balcony ecosystem on a fish that might just need to go on a diet.
Well, you seek a third independent variable. You have to establish a pattern. And that is what brings Aang to the final metric in the journal entry.
Right, the color contrast.
Yes.
So the source material details that female Golden Gouramis have a relatively subdued coloration. And Aang directly compares this to the males, pointing out that the males boast a much more vibrant, intense, yellow hue.
Like a really bright, flashy yellow.
Yeah, and we see this all the time in nature, right? Like the peacocks with those massive iridescent tail feathers, while the peahens are just a muted, camouflaged brown.
Exactly.
Or the bright red male cardinal compared to the pale, brownish female. What is the actual evolutionary mechanism driving this specific color disparity in the gourami?
It really comes down to the brutal economics of survival and reproduction.
Economics? How so?
Well, synthesizing bright, vibrant pigments, like the intense yellow carotenoids in a male gourami, that requires a massive metabolic investment.
Take a lot of energy.
Huge amounts of energy. The male is essentially shouting to the entire ecosystem, I am so healthy and my genetics are so incredibly superior that I can actually afford to waste energy producing this bright yellow color.
Oh, wow.
And I'm fast enough to avoid all the predators that this bright color attracts.
Ha. It's a biological flex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's sexual selection driving these physical traits. But the female's biological imperative is entirely different.
Right.
Her energy isn't spent on bright pigments. Her metabolic resources are heavily invested in the lipid-rich production of eggs.
Because that's what matters for her.
Yes. And furthermore, when she is carrying that high-nutrient payload, she is slow. And she is a prime, high-value target for literally any predator in the water.
So if she were bright yellow while carrying eggs, she'd basically be a glowing neon sign for every bird or bigger fish in the area saying, you know, free protein buffet here.
Exactly. She has to be subdued. Her survival and the survival of the next generation depends entirely on camouflage.
Wow.
The muted, subdued yellow isn't a lack of beauty. It is a highly evolved survival mechanism. And for Aang, this evolutionary trait serves as the absolute final piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Let's look at how Aang puts this all together, because this is where the real genius of the observation shines. It's what you might call data triangulation in the wild.
That's a perfect way to frame it. Because if we connect this to the bigger picture, in surveying or navigation, Triangulation is the process of determining a single point in space by measuring angles to it from other known points.
Right.
If you only have one point of reference, you can easily get lost. In data analysis, if you rely on a single metric, you are incredibly vulnerable to anomalies.
Right. Because if Aang only looked at the fin, there's a huge risk. Like, what if a male fish had its dorsal fin nipped off in a fight when it was younger and the scar tissue just healed in a rounded shape?
Yeah, it happened.
And if Aang relies only on that one thing, the ecosystem fails. Or if Aang only looks at the deep body shape, it might just be an overfed male.
Exactly.
And if Aang only looks at the color, maybe it's just a sickly, pale male that hasn't developed its vibrant yellow yet. Any single trait on its own represents a massive point of failure.
But by stacking the data, Aang completely eliminates those anomalies.
Right.
Aang takes the structural geometry, the rounded fin. Then Aang adds the physical volume, the deep body shape, while, responsibly noting the ambiguity.
The eggs versus food thing.
Right. And finally, Aang layers on the chromatic intensity, the subdued yellow coloration. The actual probability of a male fish having a damaged rounded fin, A&D being severely overfed, A&D suffering from a pigment deficiency, all at the exact same time is statistically negligible.
It's basically zero.
Yeah. By utilizing all three independent variables, Aang synthesizes the data to confidently and unequivocally conclude that this fish is female.
It's the green light. The triangulation is complete, the biological identity is verified, and this Golden Gourami is officially cleared to take her place in the new balcony pond population.
It's beautiful, really.
It's a masterclass in risk management disguised as a fish-keeping journal.
It truly is. And it speaks to a much, much broader application.
Yeah.
Because the methodology Aang uses here, filtering out the noise to find key markers, acknowledging your own biases and blind spots, and triangulating multiple data points to verify a conclusion.
Yeah.
That is the exact same cognitive framework used by diagnostic physicians, forensic accountants, top-tier engineers.
Which is exactly why this specific journal entry is just so compelling for you, anyone listening to this deep dive right now.
Absolutely.
Because you don't have to be a hobbyist aquarist to benefit from that Part 278 energy. We all live in an environment overflowing with complex information.
Too much information.
Way too much.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be staring at a massive quarterly financial report, trying to figure out if a company is actually profitable or just, shuffling numbers around.
Right.
Or you might be in a high-stakes corporate meeting trying to read the subtle body language of a client who says they love your pitch but won't actually commit to a contract. In those moments, our modern instinct is just to rush.
To scan.
Yeah, to scan the executive summary, jump to the most convenient conclusion, to see the round belly and just declare victory.
But the advantage always goes to the person who slows down.
Right.
The person who stops scanning and starts truly observing, who looks for the structural realities, the dorsal fins of the situation.
That's a great metaphor.
And who honestly admits when a piece of data is ambiguous, instead of just forcing it to fit a convenient narrative, and who insists on triangulating multiple points of information before making any critical decision.
It completely changes your understanding of the world around you.
Yeah.
You stop being a passive victim of information overload, and you become an active investigator of your environment.
You move from just seeing things to actually understanding how they work.
Exactly.
And that transition to active understanding brings up one final lingering thought that I think is really worth mulling over for everyone listening.
Okay, what's that?
We have spent this entire time analyzing these microscopic details, the curve of a fin, the shade of a scale. But zoom out for a second and consider the overarching setting of Aang's project. The backyard balcony pond.
It's almost an oxymoron, isn't it? A pond on a balcony.
It really is. I mean, we build these towering concrete environments. We suspend ourselves 50, 100 feet in the air, completely disconnected from the earth. The city is loud, it is paved, it is entirely human-made.
Right.
Yet, embedded deep within us is this profound, almost irrepressible biophilia.
Biophilia.
This innate human desire to connect with the natural world. It is so incredibly strong that we will go to immense logistical lengths to haul water, soil, and plants all the way up into the sky.
Just to have a piece of it.
Yes. We will rigorously study biology, track water chemistry, and act as these meticulous matchmakers for golden fish, all just to artificially curate a tiny, thriving, closed-loop ecosystem.
It's a powerful image. It makes you realize that when we finally stop rushing through our day and choose to focus on something as small as a single, carefully documented fish, we aren't just trying to understand the science of the animal. We are actively trying to carve out a tiny piece of the wild, a little bit of living magic, just to keep us grounded amidst all the concrete.